But let's talk about this Georgia team really quickly because this is a team that kind of left the door open for Mississippi State. I don't think this game was ever in doubt. Georgia races to a big first half lead, and it was 27-10 or something like that at the halftime whistle. But Mississippi State just sort of kept hanging around. They kept hanging and hanging and hanging around. But big game for Arian Smith. Big game for Carson Beck. He has 459 yards passing in this one. But I do have some questions. He does throw the 2 interceptions. Not good. But this offense, the rushing attack is just not there. That's really the biggest qualm that I have with this team. Trevor Etienne came in here. He was supposed to be a saving grace for that offense, especially in that backfield. Nate Frazier, he steps in when Trevor Etienne has the arrest and he's not able to play early part of the season. Nate Frazier was fine, 4.3 yards per carry for him. Trevor Etienne has not been very good on a consistent basis. He's flashed. He's had good performances here and there, but this rushing attack is just not good enough. You only have 150 yards in this game. There's no reason that Carson Beck needs to be throwing the ball 48 times in a game. There's no reason that this guy needs to have nearly 500 yards passing. That's ridiculous. And I understand those are great numbers, and maybe you're trying to get him up for whatever, but you're doing what you're going with the flow of what the team is allowing, the defense is allowing you to do. But it just tells me that this offense can't run the ball effectively. We talked about Texas needing to run the ball next week. Georgia needs to be able to run the ball, at least with some level of consistency.
I 100% agree with you. I don't think you could have said it any better. I was going to bring it up if you didn't. This is not a balanced offense, and nothing wrong with Carson Beck, but you're not reaching your highest potential as a unit if you need him to throw for 450 every game. That's just not what you're supposed to do. And you could single out ETN if you want, and I understand why. He's been slight disappointment. Whole offensive line's been a problem. And one, you're not healthy. But 2, you're just not creating holes. You got guys that are getting hit within a yard of the line of scrimmage, sometimes behind the line of scrimmage. Yeah, the candidates for the Joe Moore Award, top offensive line in college football, come out. You would have thought they were going to be finalists. They're not even in the discussion right now. And again, a lot of that is due to injury, and so I want to give a little bit of leeway with that. But the offensive line, it starts with the offensive line. I don't think it's on the running backs as much as it is the O-line. But yeah, you have to, there's no doubt about it. You're going to have to be more of a balanced offense to reach the highest heights of this season. That being said, you were marching towards victory in this game with an opportunity to put it away, and you didn't. And you let Mississippi State score back-to-back touchdowns on you and make what was a blowout a 10-point game. That's just unacceptable. You got to be able to put your foot on the throat. I mean, if you can't bury Mississippi State, why am I supposed to believe that if you get a lead against Texas in the second half, you're going to make it hold up? It's just troubling. And you talked about that rushing attack. You were up multiple scores. Like, you should be pounding the rock. The fact that you're limited to $150, like you mentioned, it is astonishing. It has to be way more. I think you go back and look at what the Falcons did in the fourth quarter on Sunday. Like that's the way you pound the rock when you have a lead. Georgia wasn't able to do that against Mississippi State. And look, they were never really at risk of losing this game. But you want to see them bury their opponents. Where's the killer mentality? They just didn't show it. The defense is not impactful enough. They don't scare anyone. The secondary is not good enough. They did have one interception, but Carson Beck repaid that with 2 going the other way. They're just not playing clean football. We'll discuss it in our midweek episode of College Football Overtime when we get set for Georgia, Texas. But very tough to come up with reasons why I think Georgia's going to win that game right now. I'll talk myself into it by midweek, but right now, coming off of what we saw Texas do to OU as they're supposed to, and what we saw Georgia do with Mississippi State, coming off the heels where we had some questions about Auburn, and now we have some questions after Mississippi State. They are not looking like the team we thought they would look like. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, it's the second consecutive game where you've allowed your opponent to find a lot of success on offense, and that Auburn team was a solid team. That's a solid offense that's averaging. Just look at EPA of the DVOA of sorts or whatever of what the advanced analytics of the Auburn offense. They're getting yards. They're putting up stats. They just turn the ball over too much, and Georgia let them move the ball pretty effectively. And you saw that happen again here against one of the worst teams in college football. Not even just the SEC. This is a bad football team, and you go off for 609 yards on offense. That's great. It's all well and good. But what does it mean if you allow 31 to a young quarterback who's playing it on a road start against a top 5 opponent? You allowed 31 points. I get it to some extent. You're looking ahead. You're kind of taking your foot off the gas. That's not a killer. That's not a team that wins national championships. And the expectations are for Kirby Smart and this Georgia team that you're going to be competing for winning national championships. But you play like that down the stretch against Ole Miss. You play like that down the stretch against Tennessee. You play like that down the stretch against Texas. You're going to lose games. You might be on the outside looking in sooner rather than later. So Georgia has a couple of issues that they need to figure out. Branson Robinson also goes down with a knee injury in this game, just continuing to further the concerns about this rushing attack. The depth is a problem. That's why I highlight Trevor Etienne, is because you brought in Trevor Etienne to be the guy. And to this point, he has not been the guy. He's been a guy. And he's been your starter, and he's had moments of solid play. But you brought him in here to be what he was at Florida, a really dynamic player who can overpower defenses and take over games. And to this point, he hasn't necessarily done that.
You got to remember this other thing, and it angered and agitated me as a Florida fan at the time, and maybe I see the reasoning behind it. But Trevor Etienne was not RB1 at Florida. Montrell Johnson was, and I think it was maybe for this reason. You do like to see him spark. You do like to see him flash. You do like to see him burst. Is he that guy that is a lead back? Maybe he isn't, and maybe, gosh, I hate to potentially credit Billy Napier here, but maybe he saw that and recognized how he could best be used. And maybe that's something Georgia could experiment with. Although, like you mentioned, the injury to Broderick Robinson kind of probably does limit that. I still think Trevor Etienne's an outstanding back. He has just not found the space to get going this season for Georgia.